So on Friday, Palworld released into early access on PC through Steam and on Xbox Series systems with Game Pass. And I'll admit, going into this, I was pretty much just envisioning a Pokemon game, really, like them trying to more or less clone the experience of Pokemon, bring it over, and then apparently incorporate things like guns. So I was sort of expecting maybe the Temtem approach to it, just a little more artillery involved. But I downloaded the game, I checked it out, and for the first hour and a half, you know what? It was not really clicking with me because it's not at all what I was expecting. But I then came back to it, spent some more time checking it out, and I gotta say, it's kind of won me over a bit, and having quite a bit of fun with this title, and I just wanted to go over some of my thoughts after roughly 6 or 7 hours with the game. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. Released by a studio called Pocket Pair, Palworld is a combination, from what I could tell, of Pokemon and Ark with a bit of Zelda mixed in. It's already sold 3 million copies in less than 2 days, so it's absolutely exploded online, and it's also been at the center of controversy with questions mounting around generative AI and even allegations of plagiarism, specifically comparing different PAL models to Pokemon models. I'll talk about some of that information tomorrow in Newswave. For now, though, in this video, we're just going to focus on the game itself. You do start on a shore in the beginning, so the story isn't very robust. It's kind of just, hey, you're on a shore, you look over, there's a tablet, and it says towers. Okay, you're set off into the world at that point. And visually speaking, when you look around the world, it's built on Unreal Engine, but it looks fairly basic. Like, the environments look almost stock, I guess, is the best way I could describe it. It's nothing that's going to jump out at you being incredibly unique necessarily, and it's not the prettiest looking game or even the smoothest running game, but again, it is technically an early release or early access title, so there's going to be some wiggle room, I'm sure, for people who do get into this game. Anyway, the first hour or so of the game, it does at least try to bring you up to speed with different tasks that it throws at you. That includes catching different creatures that are wandering around, building a base, crafting weapons and tools. And on top of all of this, you'll notice that your character has a hunger meter, and there's also temperature that you have to be aware of, so obviously hot or cold. And some of the survival elements, this is one of the big things that I was like, oh, when things get really, really in the weeds for survival elements, whether your character gets thirsty, they get sick, you break a bone, or it just becomes very tedious in my mind, so I just kind of check out after a little while. And I'll be honest, I saw some of the stuff here, and I was like, I don't know. So that's kind of when I stepped away for a bit, but then I came back and started to realize as I went further in, this is sort of a lighter surface level survival experience. The hunger meter really never got in the way, and when I did have to fill it back up, I just kept some berries on me, and it took a couple press the A button, and that was kind of it. So it almost feels unnecessary even to that point, which is funny me saying this because I prefer it this way, but it just kind of feels maybe tacked on just to also be able to call it a survival Pokemon game with guns. Anyway, speaking of these creatures that are wandering around, they are called pals. You catch them in a similar way to Pokemon Legends Arceus, where it's all in real time, so you aim and throw what's basically a Pokeball, and it will then suck the PAL into it, and you'll see a number, which is the percentage of likelihood that you're about to catch it. I'm not really sure how this works necessarily, because there's like a half wheel that kind of spins around as the number is either going up to 100%, which means you've captured it, or the PAL just completely explodes out of the ball and tries to run away, which means you have to, of course, weaken them. You can use one of your pals normally. It's all, again, in real time. You, for me, hit left bumper on the Xbox, and the pal will run out and start attacking, or you can take matters into your own hands, get a stick, and just start beating the pal over the head with it. I mean, there are a bunch of weapons you can use to weaken these things, or fight against other humans in different factions, which is another interesting thing there that happened. But you have bats. Of course, you have the guns that have been discussed. You have spears, bow and arrow, some can be on fire or even poison, so there are different attributes that you can add and unlock as you go through. All this working towards a technology tree that you have, which as you level up or make discoveries in the world, you'll be able to then add these points into to unlock more things for your base, different structures, different weapons, even different kind of perks and abilities. For example, some work into each individual POW, where one, you can give the POW that looks kind of like, Trico, an assault rifle. It's a pretty good upgrade. I mean, really, I scrolled down this technology tree, and eventually you'll get rocket launchers, which sounds absolutely ridiculous. However, as I was wandering around, I did notice they have some very, very large POWs that I assume are kind of like little mini world bosses, sort of. They're way above my level, which I got to like 12 or 13 or something. And some of these larger POWs are in the mid-30s. So they're just kind of showing you, okay, yeah, this is a really strong POW that you want to stay away from. But in those travels, you will find different fast travel points, and they're sprinkled out pretty well, so you can jump around the islands pretty easily when you do discover them. I also found a cave that I went through and was able to find all kinds of cool items. However, one thing I'm not a huge fan of right now with the game when it comes to exploration is when you die out in the world, you lose everything that's on you. Like, everything. Even your armor or your weapons, doesn't matter. It all is just a satchel on the field where you died, or if you die in a dungeon, just outside of that dungeon. I'm not a huge fan of dropping everything that you've ever had if it's in your inventory. I feel like if maybe you dropped one or two items, or I don't know, just nothing at all, and maybe you lose some of your experience, would be a better route. It's just kind of annoying when maybe you're well across the map and you lose everything on the other side, then you have to regroup and then get back there just to get your equipment back. Which, when you are exploring the world, you will notice that the game, the Traversal, it's pretty janky. Like, they have the elements of wall climbing that, again, reminds me of Breath of the Wild quite a bit, but it's certainly not as polished. It doesn't feel as good or look as good when your character's climbing up, or if you jump, just kind of just jumps in place. There's no real animation for that. You also have, go figure, a glider, so you can just kind of jump off the side of a cliff and fly that down. Again, a lot of inspiration from different games out there. So after you go out and you do a lot of exploration, you will, of course, gain all kinds of resources and discoveries, which means you'll come back to your base to store them and actually refine those different resources. So base building is pretty big in this game, in the sense that you have an area that you plant your flag in, and it's like, all right, this area is where I'm going to build up all these different mining facilities, these different foraging facilities, and I'm gonna have my pals run all this stuff. We'll have like a mini village essentially here, right? So you do upgrade your base depending on different objectives that you complete, which will allow you to have more pals and also allow you access to more of these different facilities. So, for example, building out that hot tub or that spring made it so that my pals will be able to relax in their off time, which means they will be able to produce more. But you can have, for example, ways to refine different ore that you find out in the world to create better resources to make better weapons, better armor. It all does work together in the sense that you go out and you do these expeditions, which then will reward you back at your base with these different items. I will say, even though I've captured a bunch of these pals, I haven't seen any of them necessarily evolve or gain moves, or maybe I just haven't looked into that enough at this time. Again, it seems like this is a massive game in the sense that there are so many directions to go in, but I haven't necessarily felt inclined to do a lot of upgrading with these creatures. Now, that may change as I get further in and there are some overwhelming bosses that I have to conquer, and I got to look towards the pals and say, okay, well, what moves do you need in order for me to get past this electric type pal, right, that's controlled by the other faction? Well, all right, we got to look for one that's like rock-based or something. So maybe then I'll be a bit more invested in the pals in terms of battling. Oh, and actually commanding these pals around in battle is not great, and I think this is a situation of they just ran out of buttons on the Xbox controller for this game, because you have to click in the right stick when your pal is out and ready to fight and decide what behavior they'll take For example, you can have them attack aggressively, you can have them be more passive and back away, and when you do hover over it, that you then kind of like click again. It's not great, as I mentioned, and maybe they can figure something out in the future, but this just feels like, oh man, we do not have as many keys as we do on the PC. How do we fit this to an Xbox controller? However, I did notice that there appears to be a wanted level system in this game, which I found by accident because I was just kind of going through the world and I look around and I see a person at a campsite, and because I had just been fighting against other factions that kind of like, I guess, a Team Rocket in this game, I start shooting them. I end up knocking them down or killing them or making them faint or something. And then all of a sudden I had a wanted level and police were chasing me. They had handguns, the whole thing, and I'm running away for a while, and they never really disappear. My wanted level also didn't go up as I was returning fire, but they chased me for a while. They were teleporting all over the place no matter where I went. Eventually, I did fast travel back to my base, and they just stopped following me, and I lost my wanted level. But that one caught me off guard a bit, to have an entire wanted system, even though it appears like it's very rudimentary and basic. Maybe the direction they go in if you go into a village and just start wreaking havoc. And then as part of the progression, your main character will also level up with different attributes. So let's go through this very quickly when it comes to the progression. Your base will level up, your pals will level up, and then your main character will level up. And then you also get points for a technology tree, depending on things you do in the world as you play through it. So your main character has a basic stat system. You'll see, like, health is in there. You have weight, which you can be over encumbered in this game. I know, pretty annoying for something that's based on exploration, but either way, you do have that. You can upgrade it. You also have your attack, your stamina, and these are all things that you have to decide where your points are going to be. And I'm not sure right now if there is a full level cap, but that's something you may want to be aware of when it comes to building your character. Is, okay, how many points do I have to spend, and what kind of build am I looking at here? There's also an entire multiplayer element to this game that I have not tried yet. To my understanding, on the Xbox, which is all the footage you've seen throughout this video, is limited to 4 people in a multiplayer session, whereas on PC it's up to 32. So you may want to consider that if you're going to jump into multiplayer with a bunch of friends. You may have to look, at least at this time, to PC. Maybe the Xbox side gets updated and then eventually you can do 16 or maybe the full 32. But the idea there being you create a world with a bunch of friends and you guys build up, I assume, your base and you level up. And that's basically right now the big pull, like the big driving force, the hook for this game is just progression, making your character better, making your pals better, and seemingly coming across these different boss battles where this other faction is controlling these pals and defeating them. So I don't really know if there's much of a story currently that's pulling people through. I think really it's people making kind of their own fun, but also exploring a world that seems more like an adult style Pokemon game, just more geared towards the older gamer, I guess you can say here. And the fact that they have so many other elements added in, while I do see many of them being fairly shallow with the survival system, just as an example, it seems like something I could see building off of, because I do recognize this as an early access game that has a world of potential in front of it. It really just comes down to if they can pull off what looks to be a very ambitious project and idea. But I will say, the first hour or so, my original thoughts were wrong about Palworld, and the further I got in, the more fun I was having. At this point, I'm actually having a pretty good time with it. So sure, if you're in Game Pass now, you have the subscription, it's there. It's on the Xbox Series. You can download it and try it out. Otherwise, maybe look at more footage, get some more opinions on the PC side. But it is also, what, $30 or so. It's more of a budget price with that early access in mind. Anyway, those are just some of my thoughts on Palworld. Of course, let me know what you guys think down below if you had a chance to check it out, and if this is something you could see yourself maybe playing for the foreseeable future. Again, it's in preview right now, which means they have quite a bit of work still to do before I guess they get to the official launch. But either way, it's on Steam or it's available in Game Pass to download and try out. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.